Okay, Carl Munson here. Delighted to be talking to Sarah Davie of Spartan FX once more. This time, Sarah, we're going to talk about the 3 steps to currency confidence. How are you and how are the markets at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of mixture across the board. I mean, for certainly our American customers or members, it's still very good levels if you're selling US dollars and buying euros. A couple of things to sort of bear in mind. I mean, I talk about it a lot. We are very good levels, but anything can change. We see with a lot of currency pairs, you're thinking, is it going to get better? It could possibly, but then all of a sudden something happens and completely pulls the rug out from underneath you and the market moves dramatically, and then everything becomes more expensive then at the end of the day. So there's lots of things that have moved the market in the last couple of years dramatically. Obviously we've had pandemics, wars, but the war is still ongoing. Anything that changes, obviously the knock-on effect of various different things like gas supplies. We're seeing a little bit of volatility at the moment because of the midterms, and then obviously depending on how that turns out, whether Biden will be able to implement some of his policies going forward. But then we've got recessions, slowing down of economies. The US dollar is very strong and perhaps too strong for the exports. So there's a lot that could happen that could move that for customers. And I think sometimes it's good to step back and look at it in a couple of different ways. One is that, the rates are really good. And if you were looking to move 6 months ago, which often is the time frame, I think, for a lot of people, you're in a much better position now than you were then.
Okay.
But then equally, if you're starting your journey and you're moving in 12 to 6 months' time, a lot could happen with the things that we've got coming out. And a lot of customers are buying their euros now in advance.
Yes. So as we stand on the day of the midterm elections in the United States, things are looking pretty good for Americans buying euros. But as you say, things can change. I asked you how the markets were and how you were. How are you and everybody at Spartan FX? Because a lot of the team there are known and loved by regular viewers and some of your regular customers. So how are you and how's everybody at Spartan FX?
Everybody's good. We've got a couple of anniversaries of some new members of staff that have joined us. So they've been with us now 1 year. So we're celebrating that. Neil's moving house. So I'm sure he can sympathise with many of you how stressful that is.
Yeah. He'll be happy to take a phone call, though, won't he? As a little bit of light relief.
Well, yeah, he probably would do any excuse to avoid those boxes.
Well, all the best to the team, and congratulations on those first anniversaries for new members of staff there. We're looking at the 3 steps to currency confidence. The first is exchange rates and movements. So could we go into that? I mean, basically what we're trying to do is simplify things, right, to make it easier for people, because it can be a complex world of currency, of FX, and we're trying to demystify it and make it as easy for people as possible. So the first one, exchange rate and movements. What should we know?
Absolutely. So there's 2 elements to that. One is getting the best rate of exchange against your bank and current providers. A lot of people will think about using their bank because that's all they've ever known, and definitely would be my first thought in that scenario. But it isn't always your best option. It's always worthwhile checking the rates that they're offering and doing comparison, and generally find that we are cheaper than certainly your bank. There are other providers out there. But again, we'll get into some other options that, yes, they may be able to offer you good rates of exchange, but it might be more difficult for you to perhaps deal with them. So the first thing is getting a good rate on the day. But what often gets overlooked, and which is why we sort of try to do this sort of educational side of things, is exchange rate movements. And yes, I have talked about, certainly for Americans, rates very good, but it all depends on your time frame. So, for example, earlier in the year, in May, the rate moved against you by 4%. Now, if you'd been waiting to buy your euros and then all of a sudden you have to pay for your rent up front, maybe 6 months, 12 months, or you need to buy a property and you've got a deadline and it happened to fall in that month, actually it cost you a 250,000 euro transfer would cost you an extra 10,000 US dollars in that month.
A lot of money.
Which is a lot of money. Yeah. So again, timeframes are important. It was interesting. I was on an event the other day, and a lot of people were talking about, you're trying to budget for your move, and there's always lots of hidden little costs. And one of the things they were saying was things like, you know, even when you move into rented, all of a sudden you think that that's the end of the story, you've budgeted, but all of a sudden you have to, maybe you'll buy more things for that property, pots, pans, all sorts of things, and all of a sudden you're going without beyond your budget. And it was really interesting to listen to that, because, you know, people are really concerned about things like that. And I'm sure, you know, there are other costs that are slightly more expensive, but exchange rate can do this exactly the same, and it can cost you even more. We're talking about hundreds or pounds, US dollars, Canadian dollars, or even thousands difference. You know, that actually by us helping you manage that, you could buy those pots and pans. You can buy, you know, it might help you, and certainly should factor into when you're budgeting for things. Obviously the difference is you can kind of think about how much a pot or pan can cost you. Exchange rate movements is a little bit different. So what we always say to people is that do get signed up with us. It's completely free, but we will keep in touch with you and we'll keep you updated and help you navigate the exchange rate movements that are happening.
And that's what you mean by helping people, keeping an active eye on the exchange rates and how things can move for or against you, and be in conversation about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, which is probably something you won't get from your bank, which I think brings us into step 2, doesn't it, when it comes to currency confidence. I am with Sarah Davie, the currency counsellor here, talking about currency confidence. Step 2, options available. And you said before, didn't you, people, this is a really old habit, isn't it? Like, I know, I'll just go to my bank because they deal with money. Them and other options. Let's go through those then, please, Sarah.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things to bear in mind. We've talked about the rates. So aside from that, we're really talking about the process of you moving your money from one country to another, and what are your options. With your bank, it's very standard. It's just moving your money as and when you need it. But as we've touched on the exchange rate movements, things can change. And actually, there's a couple of things that you can do. One, you can buy your euros in advance. Now, you're not able to do that with your bank because you need to send the euros to a destination. Now, if you don't have a Portuguese account set up yet, where are you going to put those euros? So with us, we can hold the money on account free of charge. So you can buy those. And as I said, a lot of people are doing that. Or what they've done is they've bought previously a smaller amount, and now they're buying more now that the rates are in their favor. So you may want to maybe buy some and buy some later, and that helps spread the risk of the exchange rate movements. The other thing you can do, which is really quite good for property purchases, is that we can fix the rate for any future payment. So usually when you buy a property, there's a deposit to pay, and then completion can be 6-12 weeks time. What's the rate going to be then? The whole point of fixing the rate is you're either locking into a more favorable rate, or it's really, again, all about protecting that budget. You know now how much that property is going to cost you, because buying in a foreign country with a different currency is completely different from buying in your home country. You know exactly how much that property is going to cost you, apart from maybe extra fees of a lawyer or survey. The end price is the end price. That doesn't change. Here, it could change with those exchange rate movements. So there are a couple of things that we have in place that can help you maybe buy those euros in advance that you wouldn't have typically through your bank. The other thing as well is, as I said, as part of the process, we double check beneficiary account details. That's really important, and would recommend anybody do that. You get bank details by email. You know, they could be intercepted. There's human error. So we're always double checking that. We might advise you to do a small test to that account, you know, especially if you're going to send large sums of money. You wouldn't want to send something to an account you've never sent to before. Maybe send a small test, just make sure that it's gone straight into that account before you send the larger sum. It's obviously easier to get that money back than trying to recall a larger amount of money. So we're doing a lot of the checking, the processing, taking that stress away from you, and you can speak to us on the telephone, by WhatsApp, by video call, however you want to. We'll always be there to support.
So it's, I mean, it's a bit of a no-brainer to probably not go to the bank, although that's not advice. That's just an observation that I'm gleaning from what you say. There are other options available in the market, though, of course, for currency conversion. But I think still you tend to triumph over them in your Spartan way because of this element of customer service. So, you know, there are online currency trading accounts you can set up and with cards and so on. But you're not getting that level of service that you speak about there, and those places I suspect don't have the 5 yellow stars we see on your screen of the FIFO Gold Trusted Service Award. It's all about the service with Spartan, right? That's the difference.
Absolutely. Moving country, moving house is very stressful.
Yes.
So, it's trying to take that one element away from the whole move is the money transfer and really be that support. We deal with, we've dealt with thousands of customers that are in a similar position to you. So in some ways, we can use the experience we've had with dealing with them to pass that on to you. In relation to sort of using your bank, we speak to bank tellers on a regular basis. My colleague Neil filled in a international form the other day for the client for their bank. It's little things like that again, just to try and make the process easier. And I think that's why we're talking about these steps, that yes, rate's important, but it's looking at exchange rate movements as well as the rate on the day. You're looking at your options. We're talking about the process of actually sending that money. And then I suppose that moves nicely into the third point, is about the process, thinking about planning to move your money before you need it.
Yeah,
a lot of people leave it to the last minute, which
they do, don't they? And you can understand why, because you're thinking, okay, it's just a simple matter, exchanging money. I can leave that to the last minute, but I think there are some horror stories out there that would probably have people think twice about doing that.
Oh, absolutely. I mention it constantly because it is an issue that does come up. We see it where we've had one customer whose bank had a limit on how much they could transfer. I think it was about 70,000 US dollars every 30 days. Now, if you're buying a property, a customer buying over, say, 400,000 US dollars, you need to be moving the money it would take about 6 months to move that money. Now, it's crazy.
Yeah.
You're never going to hit that deadline of buying your property. Yeah. And what's going to happen is you're going to have to fly back, which costs money and is time consuming. Yes. And that's the key thing, is why you should be thinking about this early, is because what can you do now before you move? Because when you're in your home country and you make that transfer, it's probably fine. It goes through because you're there. You can go into your branch. You can speak to the bank teller very easily. You can sign forms. But when you're not in the country, it can be a little bit more difficult, especially for larger sums, which is really kind of what we're seeing of some people that are choosing to rent initially, moving to Portugal, and then buying a house further down the line. That's probably when they'll encounter the problem. So what can you do before you leave? Speak to your bank. Is there a form that you need to fill in? Often they'll want bank account details. And if you've not got a Euro account set up, you can put your Spartan Euro account, acts in the very same way as a bank account. Do you need an international card reader? We've had customers give power of attorney to family members or lawyers, whatever solution you want to go down. But again, it's just having those conversations early on so that it makes it easier further down the line.
Do you have those conversations with people as well? So if people were to open an account with you, would you walk them through that? Because the problem we're talking about here is making assumptions, isn't it? People may have bought a house in their own country. They may have popped to their bank to get some currency to go on holiday with. But we're talking about a different set of assumptions or a different set of criteria here. And you've seen people go through this, as you say, thousands of customers who've been through the same sort of thing. Would you walk people through that to make them aware of where they might be making assumptions that could hurt them later on in the process?
Absolutely, because everybody's situation is slightly different. Time frames are different. We've had clients that thought that they, had a longer time frame, and then they've come to us and said, "Oh, actually, now I'm moving quicker than I anticipated." We've, as you rightly said, not everybody's buying a property. Some people are renting, and as I said, that's maybe why they're not thinking about it as much, because they're transferring smaller amounts initially. Some customers, when they sell their property in their home country, what we say is we can accept funds from a lawyer. So actually you could get your lawyer, rather than to send it into your own account, they can send it to us. So that would avoid you having to maybe be in the country, and that makes that easier. So it's really important for us to get to know you, your timeframes, your budget, your situation. And as I said, we can keep in touch with you. and keep you updated on anything that's coming out. Now might not be the right time for you to move your money, but it might be further down the line. And at least if we keep in touch with you, you have the account in place. If you did want to move the money, you're in a position to do so. You know, we've seen it time and time again. Rates move very quickly, but at least if we can contact you, your account's open, you're in a position to take advantage of that rate.
Very good. So those 3 steps, and just to summarize, exchange rate and movements, keep an eye on that, of course. It's the key part of buying foreign currency, isn't it? Is to keep an eye on the markets, the rates, and see what's going on there. Keep an eye on that. The options available. What assumptions are you making there about how you might change your money? It might be worth having a chat with Spartan FX. From the illustration you gave, I think it's very worthwhile having a chat. If you're saving, what was it, five figures in some instances there, or in a particular anecdote you spoke about, and the planning, checking more of those assumptions about what you're thinking you're going to do, but check them with people who've got the experience, and that'll be Spartan FX, who've dealt with lots of people exchanging money. And in this instance, I think we're talking a real a regular case study here would be somebody ideally moving from, or typically moving from the United States to Portugal. They are buying euros at the moment at quite an advantageous rate, and you've dealt with quite a lot of this type of person, that demographic, right? So in a very good position to advise in that instance. And they can open a free account with you. How would they do that, Sarah?
They can open a free account with us. We are on the Expats Portugal directory, so you can contact us there. Expats Portugal at spartanfx.co.uk. You can email us, or you can call us on the telephone number on the screen. It's +44, or email us and we can set up a WhatsApp call as well.
So many ways to do that. Okay, the website addresses you can see above me there, expatsportugal.com. Go to the business directory where you will find Spartan FX and Sarah Davie and the team. Thank you so much today, talking about the 3 steps to currency confidence to make it a little bit simpler for people, which is exactly what you do, and the people will discover when they make the connection with you. Thank you very much, Sarah.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Oh, P.S. When are you coming back to Portugal again? It was lovely to see you in the summer. I think people enjoyed meeting you. I've got the feeling you might like to come back. When might that be?
Oh, I'd love to come back. I'm trying to see if I can come back in January, in the new year.
Okay, excellent. Well, we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
No problem. Thank you. Goodbye.